Welcome to Fantasy Football Hub for the next episode in the My Team series. Today, I'm joined by FPL Raptor, who's going to be revealing his current FPL draft. Ross is a man that I'm sure many of you know already, an FPL YouTuber himself with over 75,000 subscribers, but he's also a sports and exercise psychology lecturer, which means that he has a very original view on FPL and why we make the decisions we do. Ross, pleasure to have you on, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you, mate. I mean, the season is fast approaching. By the time you guys are watching this, it's probably exactly 1 week or just under 1 week until the game week 1 deadline. So this is the business end of pre-season. And this is when our drafts finally start to take shape because of different rotation, pre-season games, injuries as well. We finally get set on our final team, and I'm excited for that.
I agree. Before this, it's been a bit of fun, I think. People saying, okay, I'll put a differential in there. We'll try this. We'll try 3 of this team. But now it's getting to the business end, or the business start, I guess, of the season. And we're going to see your team today, Ross. As always, building this on Fantasy Football Hub's My Team tool. We're going to put all your players in, and that is going to give us a team rating percentage. If you guys watching want to do the same, the link to do so for free is down below in the description. But Ross, start us off. Who is in goal?
So I'll start with the 4 million goalkeeper. That is currently Areola, which I think most people are on, just because at the moment, he looks like he has the highest chance of the £4 million keepers of starting. I'm not 100% sure that I believe he will, but there is the option throughout the season. And to be honest, I think most of us don't really like rotating keepers anyway. I don't like rotating keepers because I think it's very difficult to try and nail when a goalkeeper will get a haul. Because really, when a goalkeeper gets a haul, they need to keep a clean sheet, but they need to make a lot of saves as well. And they don't tend to make those saves in the easy fixtures. So trying to rotate keepers for me never ends well. I did it last season and it failed absolutely miserably between Kepa and Ederson. Yeah. So for me, the backup keeper doesn't really matter, but I think Areola is the best of the bunch. That second goalkeeper, I like the main goalkeeper for your team. I've been going back and forth between 2 of them. It's been Johnston for most of pre-season because Crystal Palace were actually in the top 8 for expected goals conceded last season. They were actually very, very close to top 4. And I think that they are essentially a very, very strong defense. They were even stronger when Hodgson came in. But at the moment, I've actually dropped Johnston out. And the reason for that is Onana coming into the Premier League. So at the moment, my current goalkeeper is Onana. It is a little bit template. It just feels like a really nice route into the Manchester United defense because you save 0.5 on top of Luke Shaw and all of the other Manchester United defenders. Yes, you can get for 5 million, but you have issues with them. Are they nailed? Are they going to be rotated? I feel like Wan-Bissaka and Dalot could rotate. Lissandro Martinez could be decent, but he doesn't have much high upside. So I feel like the best route into the Manchester United defense at the moment is probably Onana.
I mean, we can see that you're a United fan. Your defense last year, to be fair, pretty good, right? Golden Glove for De Gea. Do you think your defense will improve this season?
I think we'll have a very similar defense to last season. And to be honest, I think Onana will get a very similar number of points to what we see from De Gea. I think he's being overhyped that he's going to come in and be this incredible goalkeeper that will get so many more FPL points. Yes, he's an equally good shot stopper. And yes, I think that he'll probably be better for bonus points due to the amount of passes he makes, but he's not going to come in and score 40, 50, 60 more points than De Gea would in a normal season. But I think a Manchester United goalkeeper for 5 million feels like a really nice route into that defense. And as you say, really decent defense last year, looking at about 4th or 5th for expected goals conceded. So I feel like it's a nice goalkeeper and I really like the £5 million price point this season.
Okay, so let's move on to the defense.
Yeah, so I'll start with the templatey picks, the ones that everyone seems to have at the moment. I've got Gabriel and Estepinian. Those are 2 defenders that just have been in every single one of my drafts. I can't see myself taking them out. I have toyed with the idea of a triple Arsenal attack with Martinelli, Saka and Jesus, but obviously with the Jesus injury now, that's not going to happen. I can't see myself going for triple Arsenal midfield. So for me, Gabriel just feels like such an obvious pick. You could go for a different Arsenal defender if you want to, maybe mix it up with a Saliba. But I feel like Gabriel's got everything. He's got really decent goal threat. He's very, very nailed. And I don't think he's got as much competition as some of the other players in that Arsenal defense. So I think I want Gabriel in there. Again, if you look on the Fantasy Football Hub website, really good for points projections, quite a few home fixtures to start the season as well. He just feels like he's got a combination of everything. And Estepinian's kind of a similar boat, really strong defense for Brighton. Again, we're looking at a top 6 for expected goals conceded. Really decent attacking threat as well. And he's just a player that he's so highly owned at the moment. It's almost a bit of a protective pick as well, because if Brighton do well and you don't own a Brighton defender, it could be really, really bad damage for your team. And I guess the other reason to definitely have Estepinian and maybe even double up with someone like a Jason Steele is we just don't have a clue what's happening in that Brighton attack at the moment. There are so many options that they have. I think there's something like 9 or 10 attackers that they have for 4 spots, and they're all very good as well. It's not like none of them are particularly good. So even the likes of a Matoma or a João Pedro or a Ferguson that you think are very nailed, they may not well be. So it makes no sense for me to not pick at least one Brighton defender. And I have toyed with the idea, as I said, of going for a Jason Steele. It's just we don't know how nailed he is with Verbruggen coming in. So Gabriel and Estepinian, I think are absolutely nailed in my team pretty much. A really nice price point at 5 mil.
Yeah, I mean, they've been in my team for since the season, really, since the game opened. So Can't argue with that. Yeah, it's one of those. You don't want to be super template, but when you have these players at these really good price points, Estepinian now over 50% of the game own him. It's unbelievable, really, that a Brighton defender is that popular, but such is that price point, and we saw how explosive he can be last season. I will say those returns pretty much came in just one kind of crazy game against Arsenal, but nonetheless, the numbers are there, as you say. Brighton, just a great team. So yeah, can't argue with either of those two picks.
Yeah, this is, I suppose, when it gets a little bit different, but I feel like a lot of people now are looking at owning a Chelsea defender. I suppose the slightly different thing about my draft is I currently have 2 Chelsea defenders in my team. Okay. I think that the alternative you have is you can start Chilwell first sub, and I've seen a lot of drafts where you've got someone like a John Stones in defense and you put Chilwell first sub, and I've had that for a lot of my drafts, but I actually want to invest slightly more money into the midfield, and I feel like having a John Stones plus a Chilwell first sub is just quite a lot of money in your team. And I've looked ahead to future game weeks, and in quite a lot of game weeks I'm benching Gabriel or Estepinian, and it feels a bit silly to be doing that in decent fixtures. And considering how poor Liverpool have been in pre-season, once again down Trent's side, and I'm not blaming just Trent there. Matip has been pretty poor. You would expect Konate to do slightly better, but they look so vulnerable. It just feels like you could get a 15, 12 pointer from Chilwell in that first game, especially due to the fact that Liverpool tend to struggle to score against Chelsea too. So I'm actually now on board with the idea of starting Chilwell. So Chilwell is in my team, and at the moment I'm planning on starting him in game week 1. And I really don't think it's as bad of a fixture as it potentially first looks. And then I've doubled up with Colwill as the other Chelsea defender. Nice. And currently Colwill is my first sub. And again, that's not really for game week 1. I'm going to start Chilwell. I wouldn't expect to need my sub for game week 1, but from game week 3 onwards, we know how good Chelsea's fixtures become. And in comparison to Spurs, who just have really good fixtures for game week 3, 4, 5, and maybe 6, I think it is, Chelsea actually have really good fixtures beyond that. So from game week 3 onwards, they have a really nice long run. And there are tons of weeks where I'd be really, really happy starting both Chilwell and Colwill. Colwill's just signed a new contract. I think he's absolutely nailed in that Chelsea back line. Yeah. And I feel like he's probably one of the better £4.5 million options. So maybe slightly different. Like I said, I know a lot of people will probably have Chilwell or James, but I think the double up could be a really nice advantage, especially considering so many people will already probably own one Chelsea defender. You might need a second to gain anything from their clean sheets.
Love it. I love that double up. Obviously, I am a Chelsea fan, but I was watching the game last night against Dortmund, and Colwill was great. He's so composed on the ball. He's definitely nailed for that spot, as you say. Right now, injuries in our squad mean that he is pretty much the only left centre back that we have. And yeah, Colwill and Chilwell double up. You don't have to play them both each week, but I completely agree about the first game week for Chilwell. There could be attacking potential there for sure. He may not keep a clean sheet, but if you get a goal, that's an absolute haul. And yeah, Colwill, brilliant perhaps for baseline bonus as well. So good on the ball. We'll have to wait and see, but really like that. Really, really like that indeed. So last offender, I presume this is going to be a 4 million.
Yeah, the 4 millions, I've really not given it too much thought because it's a decision that you can make really last minute, and I think you're constantly looking for more information. At the moment, I've got Baldock just due to the fact that I think he's the most attacking of the 4 million defenders if he starts. My only concern is that he might not be the most nailed of the £4 million defenders. And you've also got a blank game week in game week 2 for Burnley and Luton. If you can select a Burnley defender if you want to that plays, or a Luton defender that plays, then you will probably get a double game week at some point. We would expect before you play your first wildcard potentially. So it might be nice to just have one of the Burnley or Luton defenders in there because you can get obviously that double game week at some point. But I feel like that might be overthinking it slightly. And I think I'd probably just prefer to go for the defender with the highest upside. And Baldock plays such an attacking role for Sheffield United that I feel like he's probably my favourite option at the moment.
Nice. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't really see me playing a Burnley defender who's, bargain bucket, even in a double game week, over one of those, those 3 that you've got right there. You're not going to drop Chilwell, Estepinian or Gabriel for Bayer in double game week, I don't think, personally. Yeah. It's very risky anyway. Okay, so that is the defense. Quite differential. Love it. Let's move on to the midfield.
Yeah, midfield is stacked, and it's the positions that I'm most happy with in the team. But I am relying on a couple of teams where I've got two double ups here. So I'll start with the only player that's not in a double up, and that is Bryan Mbeumo. He is my favorite £6.5 million midfielder at the moment. He has been for a while now. I did start pre-season with Matoma, and it really is those first 3 fixtures for Brighton. They're just unbelievably strong. But as I said, I'm just worried. Even with Matoma, I just don't know who's going to start. And even let's say what we think, we're almost certain Matoma should start the first 3. How much will it affect him having rotation in the other 3 spots around him? If Solly March plays one, then Buonanotte, then Welbeck and Ferguson are rotating, maybe Enciso and João Pedro rotate a little bit. Yes, Matoma might start, but will that affect him having different players to play around? I just feel like De Zerbi and Brighton this year could be a little bit like Pep, where it's, yes, they've got loads of great value options in the attack, as City do every year, the likes of Alvarez, Foden, Grealish. But if you can't nail who's going to start every game, then they're just not worth it. And from game week 4, I really, really don't like Brighton's fixtures. So I feel like starting with Matoma is great, but it's a transfer waiting to happen in game week 4, and you can't nail these minutes. Whereas in Burmo, actually, if you look after game week 1, and I don't even really mind the fixture in game week 1 against Spurs, the fixtures are much better for Brentford. And I really like game week 2, 3, and 4 for their fixtures. He's on penalties, he's on some corners. He had exactly the same non-penalty expected goal involvement as Matoma last year. So he's got very similar data. And I just fancy him to have a really strong season in the absence of Tony in the first half. So at the moment, my favoured 6.5 is in Burmo, but I love Matoma. And I am also eyeing up Eze as well, because Eze is also on penalties.
Yeah.
He's again a very talismanic like in Burmo. The only reason that I've got in Burmo ahead of Eze at the moment is he's got slightly stronger data across last season. And also I don't really like Crystal Palace's fixtures to start.
It's funny as well, that Spurs game, you're right, according to the predicted points, it's actually not a bad game at all on paper. And Burma's predicted to get 5.2 points in that game, which you'd think, Spurs at home, tough game. But the predicted points on the site suggest that actually there might be a lot of opportunity there for a goal or an assist in that game for Burmo. Okay, so that is the single player. How about the 2 double ups then?
So the first double up is Martinelli and Saka. I'm slightly annoyed about this because this is a double up that I've had for probably about a week or 2 now.
Oh, I see.
And obviously now Jesus being injured, everyone's going to be on Martinelli and Saka. I was willing to take the risk against ownership and against potentially what the underlying data might suggest and take a punt on Martinelli ahead of Jesus. And I've been pretty confident on that because I like the way that my team looks with it. And obviously now with Jesus being injured, everyone's probably going to be on Martinelli, Saka and an Arsenal defender, which is a bit of a shame. But I do think that Martinelli was a player that was going under the radar. Really strong data. And in comparison to someone like Jesus, an excellent finisher tends to perform very close to his XG, if not overperform. Whereas Jesus will traditionally and historically underperform his XG, which I don't really like when you're picking a player. And I do think that Trossard seems to be playing very, very well in this sort of left number 8 role, which is what Xhaka played last season. And I do think that Martinelli will be first choice comfortably for that left wing. And I actually think that a lot of the time, Trossard might come on for an Ødegaard or a Havertz and play more in a midfield role. Of course, with Jesus being injured, Trossard could now go to the false 9 position. We could potentially see Martinelli go central, or what is more likely, I think we'll see Nketiah play through the middle. I think regardless of what situation we have, I think Martinelli is fairly nailed. And I think a player that arguably you could expect to outscore Saka if he gets a similar or just a fewer minutes this season. And then Saka's just an obvious one for me. Yeah. He's on pens, good data, nailed. He's got pretty much everything you would want. I will just note that his data wasn't excellent. Pretty much every other attacker, in fact, I think every single other attacker in this team has better expected goal involvement last season than Saka, if you're looking at non-penalties. But the thing is with Saka, and the thing is that I forget to note sometimes, if you're looking at data on the Hub website, yes, you can sort it per 90 and you can look at data per 90. It's completely useless looking at per 90 if a player comes off at 60 minutes every game. And I feel like sometimes I don't give Saka enough credit for that. I'll say Foden's data is absolutely exceptional. Look at his per 90 data, but he averages 54 minutes this season. Then it's not per 90 data we need to look at. Whereas Saka, similar to the likes of a Salah, they play 90 minutes almost every game. And that's going to be very critical. And I think even more so now with the Premier League extending the amount of minutes played after 90 minutes, basically, it's going to be basically about 100 minutes. That is even more an advantage for the likes of Saka. So I feel like Saka's a no-brainer to double up with Martinelli.
So no Ødegaard in there then?
No, and I find this interesting because the Hub website seems to love Ødegaard. Every time I've plugged in Martinelli and Saka, I look and Ødegaard's normally got slightly lower than Saka, but slightly higher than Martinelli for projected points. I assume that is a minutes thing because the data wasn't better for better than Martinelli. It was slightly better than Saka's, but the only thing I can think is that they just think that Ødegaard is more nailed than Martinelli, which is a good point. I just think that he still is prone to some early substitutions. It happened quite a few times last season. People seem to think he's a 90-minute man. Tends to be like an 85-minute man, but he did come off quite a few times last season. And I also just don't know how Havertz coming in or Trossard playing on the other side will impact him, because I think both Trossard and Havertz are more attacking than Ødegaard. And I think that as a result, Ødegaard might have to do more of what we saw from Xhaka last season, which is drop a little bit deeper. So I want to see how that plays out. And for me, I just prefer Martinelli and Saka. Yeah,
I agree with that, because people are saying that Havertz was going to come in and take up Xhaka's role. He doesn't have that defensive capability on Naus right now. Of course, he can be coached, but yeah, I was thinking that as well. If any of the midfielders were going to have to be a little bit more defensive, in my head, it is Ødegaard. So there you go. Those are the 2 Arsenal midfielders. Yeah. It's a tough one. You're willing to take the risk on Martinelli over Jesus, but hasn't panned out. And yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think he may be in quite a lot of teams now. Okay, then I can probably guess who the next 2 players are going to be, but but tell us.
Yeah, it's Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. Again, this is relatively template, but I think you will struggle to get a midfield unless you sacrifice your defense a bit with Martinelli, Saka, 6.5, and Bruno and Rashford. I think normally you'll miss out probably on one of them. And I just like this midfield. I've been going back and forth on Bruno versus Rashford. As you can see by the shirt, I'm a United fan. I think Rashford was slightly lucky last season to get the amount of returns he did, although his data was very, very strong. His goal threat was exceptionally strong. And I feel like Bruno Fernandes was extremely unlucky to not get more returns. He significantly underperformed his expected assists. Basically, no one finished a single chance that he created. And it was frustrating to watch as a United fan. And also himself, he hit the post and crossbar. I think it was the equal most of the times in the Premier League last season. So he was the leader for that. He kept hitting the crossbar, kept hitting the post. So I feel like this season we might see a slight reduction in Rashford and a slight increase in Bruno Fernandes. And we know Bruno is comfortably a 200-point plus player when the players finish the chances that he creates and when he gets a little bit more luck. And I think with Højlund looking like he's going to be coming in, and also the introduction again of the rule where there'll be more minutes added on in the Premier League, Bruno never comes off the pitch. Like, he very, very rarely gets subbed. Even in games where we're 4 or 5-0 up, Bruno will see it to 90 minutes, which now is going to be 100 minutes. And I feel like that's just such an advantage for him. He's on penalties, on set pieces. The more I think about it, the more I actually think I prefer Fernandes to Rashford. And that is a recent change for me. But I just think there are too many things that are starting to make me think that Bruno might be the one. I do actually think that Rashford being pushed out to the left because Højlund's coming in is actually an advantage. I think that will actually serve Rashford better. I think he's better on the left than he is through the centre. But maybe it will mean that we don't rely on Rashford as much for goals. And as a result, we might see a bit of a decrease in his output. So at the moment, I like both of them. I can't really choose. But if you are to choose one, I'm maybe leaning towards Bruno rather than Rashford at the moment.
Bruno's a player that has been at those lofty heights of a premium midfielder before. As you say, clearly a 200-point player. Like, he's been 12 million. He is the same player, if not better now, with more experience, but at that cut price. Okay, so there is the midfield. Now, one thing that I've been wanting to ask you for a while, and I presumed that you weren't going to have Mo Salah in your team, Ross, is, first of all, why no Salah? Because, you know, he's been an absolute beast over the past however many seasons. And secondly, if we look at Salah's opening 2 fixtures, right? Chelsea away, Bournemouth at home. If those 2 fixtures were flipped and it was Bournemouth at home first game week and Chelsea away second game week, how do you think that would affect your decision-making and people's decision-making in general?
So it would make me less likely to pick Salah.
Really?
Because I think the only advantage I see to picking Salah at the moment is that he's a captaincy option in game week 2 because Haaland has Newcastle. So the only reason I've been keep putting him in is I'm like, I do really like the idea of captaining him in game week 2. Whereas obviously if you had him in game week 1 Bournemouth, then in game week 2 he's not an alternative captain to Haaland. But I agree with you that I think general casual managers or people that just really want to optimize their points in game week 1 would look at that Bournemouth at home fixture and go, yeah, I want Salah immediately. It could be another 9-0. But no, I think for me, the thing with Salah is I expect Salah to outscore all 5 of the midfielders I've got. I do not expect any of those 5 to outscore Salah, but you don't need them to because they're all cheaper. And when I look at the amount of points that some of them got last season, the likes of Martinelli, Saka in and around 200, we know Fernandes can get comfortably over 200. Rashford too, on his day, could probably get over 200 in a good season. I feel like if they get 20 to 30 points less than Salah over the period that I own them or again across the season, it's probably worth the saving. So it's not necessarily that I think that Salah is worse than any of my options. It's that I think that the 9 million to 6.5 million pound midfielders can get close enough to Salah that it justifies using the money elsewhere. And I feel like a lot of the time, the benefit of a captaincy option or benefit of a premium, I should say, is to have an alternative captain. And a lot of us are just going to captain Haaland every week, especially with the fixtures that City have. If City had terrible fixtures to open, it opens up the door of, do you want a premium in there to captain instead? But you look at City's opening 10 game weeks, I probably won't captain anyone other than Haaland anyway. So for me, that's why I've got no Salah. It forces me into a 4-5-1 generally if I ended up on Salah. And I don't really like that just for flexibility reasons. I end up having to drop my second striker. And then what happens is all of a sudden, some of the forwards look really good. Maybe Jesus and Nkunku and all of these start to really, really blow up over like game week 3, game week 4. Maybe Jackson looks really good too. And you have to sell Salah anyway. So I feel like you're just putting yourself in a position where you're inflexible and you're booking in transfers for the future.
Fair enough. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that game week 2 point. Very, very good point. Okay, so let's move on to the forwards then. One man that's obviously going to be in your team is Haaland. We don't have to talk about him too much. As you said, going to be your permanent captain, right? For the opening few game weeks.
It would be exciting if I didn't have Haaland, wouldn't it?
Wow. My top would be off. It would be unbelievable.
I was going to try and trick you and saying, yeah, that's about Harry Kane. No, it would be silly of us to sit here and suggest otherwise. I mean, the only reason you would suggest otherwise is if you play FPL for fun, and I don't even think that would be fun, owning Haaland really, or if you're just trying to create different content. But no, Haaland's a monster. He's got the best data we've seen in the Premier League ever, and he's got a conversion rate to match it as well, which is like Darwin and Jesus have very similar data to Haaland, actually. They've got exceptionally strong data, but they don't have the finishing to match it. And I feel like Haaland does. And he played an extremely high amount of minutes last season. I was very, very shocked. I thought he'd play a lot less minutes, but he seems nailed. Great. He's just perfect. Yeah, I'll be captaining Haaland every single week, pretty much.
Is a perfect man. Now, before we get on to your second striker, let's do the bench option first, because I want to see how much money you're going to be spending on this slot, or maybe saving some in the bank.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, so at the moment, I've just got a 4.5 as the third forward, and I do have Semenyo at the moment. Again, this is one that I don't really know who the best 4.5 at the moment is. I think it's Mubama of West Ham. A lot of people have got in their team. A lot of people saying Archer might get some minutes, but I just think that Semenyo was brought in for quite a bit of money for Bournemouth. Like, they spent a significant chunk of change on him, and he got a few minutes last season as well. And I just feel like he could be used a little bit off the bench. I don't expect him to start too many games, but at the moment, I've got him as the 4.5. And the other reason is you have to think ahead to what triple ups might you potentially want. I could want an Aston Villa triple up. I could potentially want a West Ham triple up. I'm never going to see myself with a Bournemouth triple up. It just won't ever happen. So I like the fact that that's not blocking me. And then the final thing for a 4.5 is he's got really low ownership. And the issue is when you select a really highly owned 4.5, if they then get sold for the first wildcard or in and around that to fund three forwards, they can decrease in price. We saw that with Greenwood last year. It went from 4.5, I think, all the way down to 4 million.
Yeah.
And you would have lost a lot of value on him. So at the moment, Semenyo's got the nod there, but he's third sub every week. I don't expect to need him.
Okay, now this is the interesting pick. 8 million to spend, but obviously that Jesus news has changed a lot of people's choices here for their second striker. As of today, who are you going with?
As of today, so the team that I'm showing you is exactly the team that I've had the last couple of days, and I had Nkunku in there. So if Nkunku is fit for game week 1, Nkunku will be in there. I'm not going to present Nkunku as the option today, though, because I'm going to go on the basis that he might be out for game week 1 and we don't want him. But I just want to say if he is fit and we get that news, we don't have it at the moment, Nkunku will be in there. Extremely strong data. We're looking at about a 0.75 non-penalty expected goal involvement last season in the Bundesliga. He should be on penalties for Chelsea. And I just think he is by far and away the most nailed attacker for Chelsea as well. I mean, you can let me know if you disagree as a Chelsea fan, but I agree. Yeah. I think his expected minutes are going to be much higher than the likes of Jackson, Sterling, whoever you want to look at, Mudryk. I think that he will be the one to go for. So I think nailed penalties, good data. I think Nkunku is an exceptional pick. And Nkunku is the reason that I was so happy going for Martinelli, because I did not mind going for Nkunku instead of Jesus. So yeah, it will be Nkunku unless he's out. Yeah. I would just say on Nkunku and Jackson, I prefer Nkunku for the minutes and for the penalties. If Nkunku is out, I think that makes Jackson a significantly worse option, because I think Nkunku creates a lot of creativity for Jackson. And even if he doesn't necessarily get the assist, I was watching a few of the Chelsea extended highlights. The runs that Nkunku makes create space for Jackson. And I just feel like if Nkunku's not in that team, Jackson is not going to be the option that we think he is. So for me, it's probably either Nkunku or no one, which means that at the moment, just as a placeholder, but I don't mind if they're not. I actually have Ollie Watkins in my team.
Oh, okay.
Potentially a player that's going slightly under the radar. I don't actually mind Aston Villa's fixtures. They've got a few tricky away fixtures, but you have to remember last season, Villa were really good away from home. And Ollie Watkins, it was something like 7 games in a row scored away from home too. So just because there are a few tricky looking fixtures at home, and I think one of them is potentially Liverpool away or a fixture like that, and they're not a great defense. So it might not be as bad as it looks on paper. And I feel like he's such a safe placeholder at 8 million that if Nkunku isn't fit for game week 1, but is back for 2, or let's say Jesus comes back and you want to switch out one of the midfielders, or if you want to go all the way down to a Wissa, Calvert-Lewin, Ferguson, João Pedro, Watkins is at such a nice price point and he's such a reliable player that will tend to tick along. I don't mind starting the season with him, but preferably I'd be on Nkunku myself.
There we go. Yeah, I completely agree. He's going under the radar despite having such a good season last year. And with Aston Villa's signings, people are pretty confident they're going to improve even more. Doesn't really have any competition.
I saw a statistic once Unai Emery came in, Watkins, the amount of points that he averaged per game, he would have been over 200 points. He wasn't far off anyway.
Wow.
But if he played like that the entire season under Unai Emery, he would have been over 200 points. So we're looking at potentially one of the better forwards in the game, possibly similar to what we saw with Tony last season, if not better. There is a chance he's still on penalties as well. I really don't mind Ollie Watkins. And I think the big thing for me is I've been playing around, if Nkunku and Jesus are both out, I still think I want a forward spot in there around that price point, just so that I can either get back to them, move to Jackson, or downgrade to a cheaper forward and then I'll have some money in the bank. So I like the idea of having a placeholder there.
And I guess the difference with Watkins and, say, a Liverpool forward is that although perhaps a Liverpool forward could be more explosive, the minutes there are just not nailed at all. Whereas Watkins, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then, my friend, that is the team completed. Now, this is the moment that you've all been waiting for, the team rating percentage reveal. First of all, do you know the percentage that this team has, Ross? I have to ask you this.
No, I've deliberately not plugged
Okay,
this team in because
good
I would
man.
like to be surprised, hopefully positively surprised, but we'll see.
So secondly, yes, what are you expecting here? What would you be happy with?
So my highest draft across preseason has been 97%. And my lowest genuine draft has been 91%. I've got a feeling this will be like 93 or 94, but if it's anything above 95%, I'd be really, really happy with this team.
I think there's a chance. I do think there's a chance. All right, here we go. Wow. That is very impressive. 98%.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was not expecting that. Wow.
And therefore your highest rating
my highest,
so far.
That's my highest of preseason, which probably means I'm landed on a pretty good draft to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the algorithm and the AI continues to change, evolve, and adapt as we get more news. Obviously, Jesus' minutes now completely, I think we don't know what's going on with that injury. So another option has to come in there. Yeah, as you say, fixtures for Watkins are pretty good, and his predicted points are very, very solid for the opening 7 game weeks. Even Liverpool away, Chelsea away, as you said, it's still predicted about 5 points per game. So really strong. It's actually funnily saying to start Bulldog over Chilwell in game week 1. I put Chilwell in there because I know that's what you would do. But yeah, Chilwell, for example, pretty good predicted points after that as well. So despite the fact, once again, that it is a relatively differential squad. I mean, we're not seeing loads of Chilwells, not seeing loads of Watkins, absolutely. Colwell there as well on the bench. It's getting a really, really good team rating. Yeah, you've got to be delighted with that.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. And I think this isn't far off what I'll end with. Like I said, if Nkunku is fit, then maybe there'll be a switch in the striker. But I'm really happy with that midfield 5. I'm happy with the 3 starting defenders. I think we're probably looking at a maximum of 3 or 4 changes before game week 1.
Okay then, Ross. So here are your AI recommended transfers. If you guys want to get your own AI recommended transfers that will update not just in pre-season, but every week throughout the season, you can go ahead and sign up to Fantasy Football Hub down below, top line of the description and in the pinned comment. If you sign up right now, you'll get 50% off. And also, if you don't win your mini league, you will get all your money back. That is how confident Fantasy Football Hub are in the website. Pretty amazing deal. So, Ross, I'm excited to see your thoughts here. We're going to start with, I think, the most fun one here, which is Watkins being sold for Darwin.
Don't tell me that.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
I love Darwin, and he was before this one. He was in my latest draft. I know I shouldn't let it impact me too much. I'm just slightly worried that in what was probably their biggest test in pre-season, it was a front 3 without him in it. I think it was Jota, Gakpo, Salah, and Diaz and Darwin on the bench. And I just think that Jota looks really, really nailed at the moment. I feel like he looks good, and especially with the comments from Klopp about pressing from the front, I feel like Jota will probably start in game week 1. And Gakpo was favoured so much last season at that number 9 role, and he looks really good in pre-season too. I just worry that Darwin's not going to get enough minutes. But if I see anything that makes me tempted, I do really like him. He's got the second best data in the Premier League after Haaland. So if you're a data-driven manager, Darwin is the one. I'm just worried about those expected minutes.
Yeah, of course. I will say that Watkins and Darwin's predicted points are very, very similar, but you are making that 0.5 saving. So using that 0.5, Onana goes to Edison. You're not going to like that. I know that for sure.
I feel like that's torturing me based on it. Yeah, if you didn't follow my journey last season, I owned Edison at all the wrong points. But I do genuinely believe this season Edison will be in the top 5 goalkeepers for points. I feel like he was incredibly unlucky last season. If you look at the XGC, City are an exceptionally good defense, and I expect him to keep more clean sheets. I just don't think that he makes enough saves for me to warrant the 5.5 price tag.
And then finally, Chilwell is sold for Stones. So the AI is favouring a double up on the City defence. Again, pretty much just because of what you just said. The numbers are so good. They are the best defence, but that doesn't always equal points.
No, the algorithm will always push City, and rightly so. And they'll push Newcastle when the fixtures improve as a result as well, because the data's so strong defensively. I do like Stones. And in a lot of my drafts, let's say, for example, I go for Jackson instead of Watkins, then I can do Colwell to Stones, and I can have both Chilwell and Stones alongside each other. I don't think that I prefer Stones to Chilwell just due to Chilwell's insane attacking threat.
Okay then, so those are the AI recommended transfers. Obviously, you don't have to do any of them, but it just gives you an unbiased opinion. Well, unbiased kind of idea, not opinion, absolutely not, as to where you could potentially improve. But as you said, you don't really fancy any of them. Fair play. That is kind of the point. Ross, thank you very, very much for that. Your team looks great. 98% team rating is one of the highest we've seen so far. Now, obviously, this is a week out from the start of the season. If you guys want to see FPL Raptor's eventual team that he's going to start the season with, please go ahead and go to his channel, FPL Raptor, also linked down below in the description and the pin and comment to see that final team. Because, of course, there could be a number of changes. As you said, if Nkunku's fit, he's in. If you'd also like to try all the stuff that we've seen over the course of the video, then the link to do so down below is right there. And again, thank you very much, Ross, for your time. Really enjoyed that one, and we'll see you on the next.